Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with a story in which our OP's boss was demoted because she was unprofessional and didn't listen to anyone but herself. Well, she deserved it. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Boss shushes me when I try to warn her of a mistake. So I'm a lawyer in Brazil, but when I was at college, I got an internship at a tribunal. I usually worked behind the scenes dealing with paperwork and some bureaucratic stuff. It was usually a nice place to work, but occasionally the judge, the boss of my boss, would require some intern to help her with the hearings. It was not unpleasant work, but more of an annoyance since we were only 8 people dealing with the paperwork of over 10K lawsuits, which means that every time she requested someone to go help her, they knew that there would be a lot of accumulated work when they got back. Something I need to point out about this specific judge is that she was a very polite and pleasant person outside of work, but at court she would become extremely micromanaging, especially about bureaucratic stuff that she never had to deal with and didn't understand, usually making our work take way longer than it needed to be, and whenever a lawyer was present, suddenly she became very rude and demanding to anyone below her. On this specific day, I'd been assigned to help her with a very long hearing. In Brazil, this stuff is all recorded, so for me, that meant taking care of the computer, taking notes, but mostly making sure that the camera was on. The thing is, whenever you do these recordings, it has a kind of script that needed to be followed. First, she'd tell me to start recording, then she'd present herself, tell what case was being judged, then name the first witness and show their documents to the camera to prove that we were questioning the right person. Only after that, she'd start questioning the witness, then the lawyers take turns doing the same. I'm not sure why, but she was more annoyed with me than usual that day and did everything in her power to show everyone in the room that she was the boss and I was supposed to just do what she said without arguing. But despite that, she was talking a lot with the lawyers about trivial stuff while waiting for some witnesses that hadn't arrived yet. Finally, everyone is there and the hearing can begin. But for some reason, she was so distracted with the conversation that she forgot about the script and just started questioning the witness without doing the proper presentations and asking me to start recording. As soon as she started questioning him, I tried to discreetly warn her, but all I could say was, "Your Honor," before she loudly shushed me without looking in my direction. It was not at all discreet and everyone was visibly embarrassed, including me, so I did the only thing I could in that situation: nothing. I couldn't start recording without the presentations and definitely not do it in the middle of the hearing, so I just sat there and waited. After almost half an hour of questioning, she asked me to stop the recording because they'd do a small recess. All I could say was, "As I tried to warn you, Your Honor, the video was not recording when you started questioning him." She got visibly white and started saying, "But you should have," before realizing her mistake. She tried looking around for support, but everyone saw the way she shushed me and had that look of, well, he's got a point. I don't know exactly what happened after that because they did the recess anyway and I was sent back to my usual work and didn't get to participate in the rest of the hearing. It was a relief because I had a lot of work to do. I graduated a couple of days later and I don't think there were any big repercussions about this specific mistake, but I heard a few years later that since her productivity was extremely low, and after other more serious mistakes, she got demoted. She's an auxiliary judge today, which means that she helps other judges, but is not responsible for dealing with any lawsuits on her own. And our second story. You don't want us to work here with that attitude? Okay. Many years ago, when I was at university, I got a summer job renovating squash courts. The company was basically the boss, more about him to follow, a van containing all the required equipment, and me and my friend, Rod. He'd started work for John, the boss, first. He needed another guy, recommended me, and boom, I was in. It wasn't a bad job for a summer job. We traveled around the UK working on squash courts. We'd either paint them, which required scaffolding so we could repaint the lines. The white paint we'd do with really long roller pulls, use pneumatic hammers, Kangos, to remove the front wall. The plaster goes dead after a while apparently, or rip up the floors. In the latter two cases, the boss would then employ skilled subcontractors to replace the floor or wall. So the work was basically unskilled but pretty physical. The pay was good for a student, and we got to drive around the country in a van, stay in cheap hotels, which seemed pretty glamorous at the time, and go out for beers most nights, plus save cash for my next term. Sweet. The boss was pretty posh for someone with such a small business. Maybe he had others, or maybe this paid really well. I don't know. But he lived in a huge house in an expensive part of town, drove a Jaguar, his kids went to private school and called him Pater. He was okay, but kind of a jerk. One Friday, we got up early in one town, can't remember where, near London somewhere, worked flat out to finish a job, driven 2 hours to the next one, got set up for that, then broke for lunch. Because we were new in this town, we set out to find a fish and chip shop. Staying in hotels obviously meant we couldn't make lunch to take in. It took a while to find one, and when we finally did, they were just cooking some fresh chips. We had to wait to be served, so we did. Ate them and went back. We'd been gone about 50 minutes. When we got there, John was there. He'd come to make sure that we'd arrived okay, this was pre-mobile, and that everything was going as planned. He wanted to know where we'd been. Lunch, we told him. But we'd been gone for over 40 minutes, he said. We explained. He said that wasn't good enough. We said we'd started work early, driven 2 hours, had to find the place, wait for chips, etc. We were working hard, and that this, A, wasn't our fault, and B, wasn't unreasonable. He told us that if that was the kind of attitude we had, then maybe we shouldn't be working for him. He then left. We finished the job and repacked the van. It contained scaffolding, pneumatic drills, painting equipment, and so on. It had to be packed like Tetris to make sure it was organized and accessible. We took turns opening the door, the other one chucking stuff in, then slamming it shut before it all fell out. We drove back to John's, where we left the van. When based at home, we collected our pay and handed him the keys. "See you Monday for the Bracknell job," he said. "Oh no, sorry," we said. We had new jobs on Monday. We had. Rod and I were both lifeguards and had called some contacts and got pool work for the following week. It was crappy and didn't last long, but hey, I was a student and didn't care much. But I don't understand," said John. "Well, you said if we had an attitude like we did at lunchtime, then maybe we shouldn't work for you." "We do. So we don't." Then we left. Felt great. Always an annoyance when people take you seriously and have self-respect and a backbone. Pointers for any boss: never make an ultimatum you can't back. And our last story. After parking in my space and being asked to move, she flipped me off and told me to do something about it. Yes, ma'am. I followed a Subaru Legacy onto my tiny, less than 1,000 feet long and only about 12 feet wide in some places, private road. Not public. For all you that missed the word private, I made it bold for you. There's no such thing as public parking on a private road. The car then pulled into my driveway. As I waited, thinking this person was just lost and turning around, which happens quite a bit, a woman got out of her car and started to walk past me. Albeit a strange driveway/parking area as it's across the street from me, it's still my property. It's not just in front of my house where I have some misguided claim at some type of possession due to its relative location from that house. It was presented that way by the realtor 26 years ago, shows up on city records, it's on the surveys done back then, and recently it's on the deeds. Every single portion of the pavement that makes up this private way was put on top of someone's deeded property. I also spent over $10,000 having it professionally built up, leveled, then paved. It's mine. And it's for my vehicles, including my work vehicle when I have one, my tenants, and our guests. I didn't do all this to be denied access by anyone. I sent the tow truck company a photo with the word Subaru. Never wanting to assume arrogance, I treat everyone with the respect I'd want them to treat me with. I put down the window and politely said, "Excuse me, but that's my spot. Could you move your car?" To which I received a middle finger and told to do something about it. I said, "That's at least $100, B." It was $125 once the car hit the impound yard. She proceeded to go to her friend's car and drive away. Instead of my now former neighbor, whose knowledge of the property lines has been clearly established by her arrogance in the past, telling her friend to move, they disappeared down the road. I then drove up to take the last available spot on my property, leaving nothing for one of my tenants, despite there being 5 empty spots at her friend's house. She drove onto the private street, passing a private way sign, multiple no trespassing, no parking, parking for residents only, and other variants of those signs, to her alcoholic friend's dirty apartment in a rundown house, saw her friend parked in the dirt parking area, passed the empty spot before her friend, past her friend's car, past 2 to 3 more empty spots next to her friend, past 2 more cars, and parked in the clean paved area in front of the clean, well-maintained house next door. She then was asked politely to move and chose to be a B instead. About half an hour later, the car was towed and impounded. About 6 hours after that, she's banging at my door, got told to leave, refused, and was eventually removed forcibly by police. She was also told never to return. She did return and was promptly arrested. What she didn't do, however, was ever even attempt to contact the impound yard to get her uncle's car back. About 50 days later, I remember the fees were just under $2,000, in lieu of payments, her uncle handed over the Subaru keys and signed the title over to the impound yard. My friend's impound yard. It takes about 6 weeks for a new title to come in, and the impound yard was getting overcrowded. Since I just sold my black Impala and now had an empty spot, I offered to store the car at my house until the title came in. He did drop it off around a week later, but the title came in quicker than usual. I never got the opportunity to see her face, but I would imagine it was priceless. You did make it clear that it was your own private property after all. She should have moved the car. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.